Welcome to Higher Learning. I am your host, Oz Rashid. This is more than just a podcast. It's a front row seat to how elite leaders build the most iconic of teams. The kind of leaders who spot potential that others overlook, who build cultures people don't want to leave, who set the bar, then raise it. Work and how we work is evolving at a rapid pace like no time in history. Our guests will give you insights on how to stay out in front when it comes to all things talent, leadership, management, artificial intelligence, and developing the skills that actually matter. Whether you're a founder, hiring manager, or just obsessed with building teams the right way, this is your spot. If it's your first time here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button, drop a rating, tell a friend who gets it. To our longtime listeners, we appreciate you. Thanks for the continued support. Now, let's get into it. All right, listeners, you're in for a treat today. My guest started his career at a major hedge fund pricing complex financial instruments. Not exactly where you'd find one of retail's most forward-thinking digital leaders, particularly in the cookie and baking space. But David Salama has always been drawn to the same challenge, finding industries that haven't evolved in decades and reimagining them around the customer. He did it at S&P Global, where he led the company's innovation lab. Then he bet on himself, co-founded FlyCleaners, raised more than $10 million, and grew the business to 300 employees, and helped build one of New York City's first on-demand companies, all to reinvent laundry. Now, for the past 6 years, he's served as chief digital officer at Insomnia Cookies. He built the engineering, product, and IT organizations from the ground up, modernized the company's technology stack, and helped drive significant growth across the business through digital transformation. And he also believes AI is going to create more opportunities than it replaces. David, welcome to Higher Learning. How you doing, bud?
Thanks for having me today.
You are up in New York City, right?
Yes, I am.
The energy in the city is nice right now, huh? Summer's good, Knicks win, all this good stuff happening in New York, it feels like.
Still wake up every morning and think, wow, I can't believe the Knicks won the championship. And that hasn't gotten old yet, and we're almost 2 months out.
I'm so jealous of you. I have to tell you, as a long-suffering Phoenix Suns fan, one day it'll be my day. But now the Knicks have given me hope that it is possible, because for many years, that was not the case for them. We are going to come back to the Knicks at the end of the podcast for sure. But I want to start here. You are the chief digital officer, as we talked about, at Insomnia Cookies. Delicious cookies, by the way. Let's talk about how you got into the marketing, the digital, the tech space. Was this something that you fell into, or something you had planned and preconceived?
Definitely wasn't something that I had planned and preconceived. I went to school, studied finance and marketing, with an eye really towards getting into finance, and start off in the hedge fund world, and was really drawn to complex instruments and trading strategies and things of that nature. And then after a few years of doing that, I started to feel like there was a lack of creation, that there was this drive within me to build and to create, and it was going unsatisfied. And so I switched over to financial technology because I saw what was going on in the technology space at the time and felt, okay, this is a place where you can really leave your fingerprints on things. And so started working at S&P in their sort of capital IQ division, and got deeper and deeper into sort of digital product there. Got an opportunity to lead the product side of our innovation lab there. And that was really the first time that I had the opportunity to do something that's really become my passion, which is to take these emerging digital or technology trends and to find applications for them in different industries that were a little bit more traditional or a little bit more analog, but then sort of use these sort of emerging tools to really drive change, drive impact, solve problems, take advantage of opportunities. And so I did that there, and then I sort of applied that to the laundry industry, and now I'm applying that to the cookie industry.
Laundry industry is fascinating to me. That story that you told me about that startup is pretty amazing, and what a bunch of success. But of course, I really want to talk about Insomnia. I want to dive in here. I've definitely eaten the product before. I'm going to have to really hold back from making cookie puns the entire podcast, so bear with me. I want to know.
I've heard them all.
You heard them all, I'm sure. Yes. I don't want to be cheesy. Let's know what drew you to the company, though, because I imagine going into Insomnia, right? There had to be something that pulled you to it. And then I'm just interested, what is the chief digital officer? That can mean a lot of things at a lot of different companies. So I'm specifically interested in what it means at Insomnia.
Yeah. So I've known Insomnia for a very long time because I know the founder and the CEO, Seth Berkowitz, for over 20 years, and he was actually my co-founder in at FlyCleaners. And so I've always sort of been Insomnia adjacent. And the story of Insomnia it's weird because it was a technology story before the technology existed to a certain degree, right? And so Insomnia was founded by Seth Berkowitz at his dorm room at University of Pennsylvania. And the idea of it was that at a time where the food delivery business was really just like pizza and Chinese takeout, he imagined that there would be this real need for something that was sweet and warm and nostalgic and decadent, and really sort of pushed to make that a reality. And so initially, a big chunk of this business was delivery. Actually, it started off purely delivery and then sort of incorporated retail locations a little bit after that, right? But the idea of it, right, of getting this warm cookie sort of delivered to you was there from the beginning. The tools to really make it an amazing delivery business followed that, right? And so, Seth often talks about how the sort of invention of the iPhone and the App Store and really the migration of everything to an e-commerce world was a huge tailwind for the company because as a delivery product it was so perfect, and for the target audience that was always sort of the young college crowd, it was such a natural place for them to interact with friends and to sort of buy their goods and get what they wanted late at night. And so the technology then sort of jumped into it. And so by the time that I joined Insomnia, Insomnia was right at the precipice of like big this big stage of growth. And so from the time that I joined in early 2020 until now, they more than doubled the amount of bakeries that they have. They expanded into Canada and UK, and we've grown the digital part of the business, like the e-commerce part of the business, as a share of the total business has probably grown by about 25 to 30%. And so we are like actually rapidly taking on more and more of the business versus our retail locations, and our digital footprint has increased and our digital audience has really increased as well. And so my scope here as sort of the chief digital officer, um, it really varies. It's everything that technology touches within our organization. And so I can go from like a meeting trying to sort of plan out what the hardware and connectivity in each one of our almost 400 bakery looks like, and making sure that we have the teams on the ground to build those out as we sort of doubled in size over the last few years. Then I jump into a data and AI meeting when we're working on AI driven solutions to these micro decisions that happen in our bakeries on a daily basis, like how many chocolate chunk cookies should a bakery in Ithaca, New York, bake in the middle of June at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday. And we're using AI to help with that decision making. And then, from there, jump into how do we envision the next version of our app and our loyalty program to sort of grow and develop as we try to constantly engage our core customer segments. And so, there's a lot of digital strategy there, but there's also a lot of digital execution there. You can dream up all of these great ideas, but it's also around the teams and the systems and the processes that really help make those ideas and those dreams sort of come into fruition, and to sort of execute on those in the best way possible to help drive the business.
Yeah, going back to what Seth said about the application and the iPhone and that kind of timing, like really helping the business take off. Like if you think about something like Uber, Uber is not the scale it is. It's not anything without that app store, without the ability to be digital. And it sounds like there's something very similar there in terms of your role in the digital leadership that you do with Insomnia, where now I can go on my phone, want a cookie, 20 minutes later, I have it delivered to my house hot and fresh. This is different than back in the day when you and I grew up, and I'm calling Pizza Hut and 30 minutes or less and it's free, and things like that. So it's a totally different market now. So I think that's really great understanding of how technology can come together and really kind of open the aperture and the TAM of a business because of the ease and the convenience. A couple of things I want to ask you about that. So first thing I say is, when it comes to Seth, was the cookie like the vehicle he saw as the next step of what people would want to order into their house? Or did he have a proclivity for like liking baking cookies and that was just where he went? Or was there some combination of both?
So he definitely had a sweet tooth. And so the classic story that he tells is that he was playing video games with his roommates, and like the pizza delivery guy came for like the third or fourth time that night, and because that was all there was, and so like they just kept playing video games and kept ordering pizza, and like by the time he got up and answered the door for the fourth time for the pizza delivery guy, he was like, "What are we doing? Like, there's got to be some way for us to expand our horizons beyond just like this sort of poor pizza." And as a he's a native New Yorker, so he wasn't very kind to the pizza scene in Philadelphia. Um, and I think so. This concept was about expanding that palette, number one, but also there's something about a warm, sweet, decadent product that also sort of hits that like nostalgia note that I think is sort of very unique, and that there's a real space for within sort of the overall food market, right? When people think about sort of insomnia, I take a lot of meetings that start the same way that this podcast did. Oh my God, Insomnia Cookies, I have such great memories, right? Those memories are around like we had a great night out and then we went and we got cookies. That's like the perfect ending to what was sort of a great night. Or we had a bunch of people, and some of those times that we were just all hanging out in our dorm rooms, watching a movie, studying together, having some cookies nearby. Those were some of the greatest moments of my college life or my college experience, right? Those sort of like those warm moments, as we sort of call them within insomnia, right? That like in the moment you sort of don't put a lot of value on, but sort of looking back on it, you realize that like that was sort of the meat and potatoes of the college experience, right? And so I think that's what Seth really tapped into, and something that he sort of really understood. Um, that as you're sort of out there, you're in college, you have in your mind, you have all these ambitions, you want to change the world, you want to change who you are, you have all these, you're sort of in this sort of constant change and growth phase, but there is something as simple as like a delicious chocolate chunk cookie that can sort of hook you back to, the days that of your childhood, that hook you back to the home that you grew up in, that hook you back to those sort of that warm foundation of your life. And I think it gives a sort of sense of comfort for people as they're out there and doing all sorts of other crazy things, to sort of have that sort of bring them back a little bit.
I love the nostalgia aspect of it. So I'm 44 years old and I remember, walking around the mall and Miss Fields, right? Where you go and you get a big chocolate chip cookie, and somehow I think they were piping it into the mall because you couldn't walk by it without that smell like wafting over your nose and wanting to go buy it. And then I've seen thing when I walk into an insomnia, it's just like the smells. It brings you to mom or grandma's fresh baked cookies. Now, I might be the first person to make this analogy, but is Mrs. Fields the Blockbuster to Insomnia's Netflix? Maybe. We don't know. Am I the first person to make that analogy, or you've heard that before?
Oh, no, I mean, we've definitely heard it before.
Oh,
The cookie industry had some of these legacy players that were what we call them sort of the mall cookie companies, and they sort of went the way of the mall, right? Which is, a lot of the malls sort of have closed up shop, or don't have the same presence that they used to. But you hit on an important point, which is that this is a sensory experience, right? It's not just around, oh, this is a delicious tasting, cookie, because you can get delicious tasting cookies when you buy Oreos at the grocery store or something like that. Um, there's a sensory experience around it, though, right? Like going back to your childhood, right? It was the smell of the cookies in the oven, and that's what you sort of feel again when you walk into an Insomnia bakery, and you capture that smell, and the feeling of a warm cookie in your mouth is very different than the feeling of an Oreo. And so there's all of those elements. And then for me as a digital leader, very early on in Insomnia and almost constantly since then, it's how do I take something that is almost naturally cold, which is a digital experience, right? You're going onto a site, you're choosing which cookies you want, you have to put in your credit card and your phone number and your address. Like there's all these operational and very dry elements of it, but I'm trying to create an experience that extends the sensory experience that you would get in one of our bakeries, right? I want to almost start that consumption experience from when you're ordering the cookies all the way, and then it can extend all the way through when you actually get the cookies and eat the cookie. And so it's a real challenge, but there's so many tools out there that you have that are available to us to really make our product come alive, to make our experience come alive. And again, this sort of touches on what I was talking about before. It's in those moments that I find the biggest challenges, but really sort of the passion that I have for what I do.
Snap-on odor hardware. You go into Uber Eats as you're selecting over things. You're getting the pizza smell. You're getting. I mean, we just invented something, Dave. You want to do a little side gig, man? We can do this. I think that's a good idea. One more quick question. I wonder about this as a founder. You start a retail business in New York, and I would imagine that I mean, in New York, I say there's something for everybody. There's a lot of everything there, right? You can get into the niche of the niche of the niche in New York. I'm sure you had data that compelled you to go national and start doing these different things, but I'm just wondering, like, how much of it is like, I had success in New York, and what is the real opportunity to expand this in less densely populated areas or metro areas? Was there any type of trepidation around that as you started to expand into different markets, even internationally, as you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, so the base of Insomnia has been the campuses, right? And there you have a captive audience to a certain degree that is, I guess, relatively homogenous from a demographic basis. And so you can very easily sort of say, hey, whatever worked at the University of Pennsylvania could probably work at Syracuse University, could probably work at Ohio State University, can probably work at Alabama University, and so on and so forth. And you can sort of expand off of that. Now, as you're doing that, you're sort of learning a little bit more, right? The city university versus the more rural university. So, University of Chicago, and how is that different than Tuscaloosa, the University of Alabama, right? Or Gainesville, right? And so you learn a little bit over there, and then you say, okay, well, if we can make it here at a city campus, what if we expand into the nightlife area, right? And so then you go into nightlife areas at major cities or secondary style cities, and you say, okay, well, now we know we can work in these sort of nightlife areas that aren't attached to a campus, and so you expand that out a little bit more, right? And then you also learned, hey, even when the students leave in some of these other areas, these more suburban areas, we still have this relatively consistent customer base. So you go, oh, what if we just went to like a really great suburb, and then that didn't have a campus, and then we started to do that as well, and we've been doing that recently, and it's been going very, very well. Internationally has been interesting because again, you start with the university base, but what you learn is that the university system and sort of the culture on campuses is a little bit different in Canada. It's a little bit different in the UK, and so you go in there, but we're already sort of established enough as a brand, and we already had a successful enough base that we were able to go through some of those learning curves and sort of understanding how the university world or the campus world is a little bit different in different countries. And so we had to make some optimizations, and now we're succeeding in those international markets. But you almost have to go into those with this mindset of, I might be 80% of the way there, but I need to be open to the idea that like there's going to be 20% that I was not aware of that I'm going to have to sort of shift pivot on.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the core responsibility of a digital leader, and then maybe a little bit about your personal philosophy. I'm just interested, how do you measure success, especially like outside of just like growth and traffic and conversion and stuff like that? Like, how are you as a chief digital officer of this company measuring if you're doing what you need to be doing?
Um, I would say it's how quickly we can go from noticing and noting a trend that's starting to emerge to incorporating that into our business. And so, you brought up Blockbuster before. I see the role of a digital leader in a digital organization, or sorry, the digital team within an organization to be to sort of read the curve on where the road is taking an industry, and to help the organization steer into that curve and sort of hit the accelerator through that curve so that you start to sort of place distance between you and the rest of the field
Mhm.
rather than sort of like going off the road completely and like crashing out like a Blockbuster did. Um, and so not only do you have to have the capability to sort of note these trends and understand how they're going to impact your business and what applications might exist within your business, you have to build the capabilities internally to take advantage of those. You need to have a team that is well-rounded. You have to have a team that is full of problem solvers and critical thinkers and collaborators who understand how to get into a room with the operations people or get into a room with the marketing people, have an idea of where they think the digital world is going or what capabilities they now have, and find ways to sort of apply those capabilities and then execute on them in a really strong and optimal way, so that you build up this faith and you build up this confidence within the organization, so that you're then entrusted in the future. That when you say, "Hey, the world is going this way, and this is what this means for our business, and this is how we should apply, these trends within our business," they go, "You got it. Like, we believe in you. We have faith in you. We have faith that you know what's happening, and we have faith that you know what to do about it, and that you'll execute on it." And so I think as a digital leader within an organization right now, I think that's sort of the main thrust of the job, and that's how you measure success, right? If it's, if something like AI emerges and you're like 5 years later, you're like, "Hey, we just introduced our AI application because I didn't have any AI capability within the organization, and we had to start from zero, and then we went to an agency, but the first agency wasn't good, so we went to the second one, and then you fell behind your competitors." That to me is sort of a failing mark. If you say, "Hey, we're like one of the first, food and beverage QSRs to sort of implement this type of AI solution, or that type of solution," and we went from like seeing it to sort of executing on it in 3 months or 6 months, because we had sort of the internal capabilities and foundation for that. That's sort of like an A grade.
Sounds to me like the chief digital officer might be one of the most important positions in any given company. And I don't think the majority of companies that I know have that role, or maybe they call it a CTO or chief product officer or something different. But to me, I mean, if it's anything going on right now with AI and how it's going to completely change our businesses, which to me is a complete greenfield still right now, right? How there's these, even in Insomnia, right? Like the ability to go on your phone and order an app and a cookie has completely redefined what that business is. Like when we talked about what it used to be previously in the mall, brick and mortar type situation, we're going through another fundamental change with AI. And there's going to be all different types of apps and businesses and services and product offerings that are going to fundamentally change that we don't even have a full concept of just yet. But we'll look back in 10 years and we'll feel like, oh, always knew that was coming, right? Because that's how it always works. And having somebody like yourself leading that strategically, being out in front of that, not getting caught flat footed, I think is one of the most paramount things a business could do. Insomnia is lucky to have you. I want to ask you about the AI aspect because, a lot of topic on this conversation of this podcast and in between my circles is AI. It feels like it's died down a little bit in terms of like this total role replacement theory that we have not seen any proof of yet. I hope we start to get away from the Skynet type threats as well. Those still seem to be there. But I'm just interested. I think we're all kind of trying to figure out how do we integrate and live with this technology in a harmonious way. You think that it's going to create jobs, and there's like a still loud faction of people, including some of the people that lead the frontier models, who say the opposite. So where do you differentiate? What do you see?
So I think that historically, whenever something has become easier to produce, faster to produce, cheaper to produce, rather than running into sort of a limit of, oh, there's just not enough demand for sort of the mass production of this thing, you actually end up creating more demand, right? So think about like the furniture industry or the clothing industry, right? These are things that 100 years ago, it was took a long time to produce. It was very, very costly. The expectation was that customers would have to pay a very high price for individual items, and the expectation on the part of the consumer was, I'm therefore going to hold this for a long amount of time, right? If I bought a dining table, um, this dining table was going to be with me for 10 years, for 20 years, whatever it might be. Now, we start to mass produce furniture. And so you'd say, oh, well, why are we mass producing it? People only buy a dining table every 10 years, right? So why would we mass produce dining tables? But instead, what people said was, oh, the cost of the table went down. I can get it really, really quickly and easily. So I'm going to live in this apartment for the next 2 years. Let me buy the perfect table for the next 2 years. And then when I move in 2 years, I'll just buy another table. And then, I move 5 years after that, I'll buy another table. So in the span of 10 years, they've already bought 3 different dining tables. So the demand for dining tables has tripled. So the same thing's going to happen with something like software, right? When I first started Insomnia, marketing would ask for features all the time. And my constant answer to them was, number one, I can't get it to you by the time you want it. You want it 4 weeks from now. The minimum amount of time that it takes us from conception to release, including testing and everything like that, is probably 6 to 10 weeks, right? So You sort of came to me too late, number one. Number two, the return on investment's just not there. You're coming to me with a feature that'll make us $40,000, $50,000, but it's going to cost me $20,000 to $25,000 of developer time, just to sort of get it released. So at 2x return on my investment, it's not really worth it. But now you take that calculation, it's totally changed, right? I can release things in a matter of days rather than a matter of weeks, because of some of the automation that's been introduced via AI for software. And the cost of that, therefore, has really gone from whatever it was, $20,000 down to $2,000. So now that same project that's a 40 to 50,000, net revenue to us now has a 25x return, and I can make it within that timeline. So the demand, or sort of the list of things that marketing is going to now come to me with, now that they are free to come to me with these, with these ideas that in the past didn't have a high enough impact, but now they can, we'll have a full list of things to do. And instead of writing code that we think will last for 5 years, we're going to write code that we think will last for 5 months, and we'll just continue to sort of churn it that way. And so don't think that a software engineer's job is going to go away. The job will change, right? What they do and how they do it will change dramatically. But the amount of software solutions that people are going to want, or software applications that people are going to want, is going to grow exponentially, and therefore demand for software engineers will grow as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think Javon's paradox is availability and price go down, demand goes up. And here's the biggest thing. There's not going to be a limit on intelligence. We're not ever going to be like, you know what? No, we got enough information. And that is ultimately what these frontier models and these AI labs are doing, is providing us intelligence across context of all these different things. Many of the things that we, on a day-to-day basis, I'm doing things that 10 years ago would have seemed crazy. And then I think back to the time before we even had cell phones, and we didn't have Google, and we didn't have the internet. Like, this is the evolution. The demand goes up. Fast fashion is another example of what you said in terms of the demand going up. Like, this is how it works. And yes, you're right. There will be job design change. Things will evolve. But ultimately, I see it leading to more abundance, and I see it leading to more of everything. And again, I don't think there's a limit on how much intelligence people need to be able to get things done and offer more things and provide value to other people around them. And then the way it's constituted and the way it's built will be different, but the speed and the efficacy will continue to be important, and that bar will change. But I couldn't agree with you more.
I also think that we've designed our world to a certain degree to be simplistic, because the bottleneck was what our own minds can sort of handle to sort of analyze, right? So you think of supply chains or operations, right? You built them. Insomnia, we own and operate all of our locations. We have almost 400 locations. We own and operate all of them. We designed all of these systems to be as simplistic and straightforward as possible, because simplicity scales, right? But in the world of AI, I don't have to design systems to be simplistic anymore. I can allow for systems to be more complex, because I am no longer the bottleneck as far as being able to analyze and make decisions on, say, a store-by-store basis, right? Or going really deep into my supply chain and saying, I don't actually need the best supply chain might not be the most straightforward one. It could be a complex one, as long as it serves my needs and I can manage it. And so the more that I'm able to manage, leveraging AI, the more I'll be able to do, and I'll be able to manage more and more complex systems. But you'll still need people to help manage those complex systems. And so that'll always still be a part of the overall ecosystem.
Love it, man. Fascinating stuff. I appreciate you sharing that with us. I'm sure everybody just got a lot more knowledgeable on that first 20, 25 minutes. I do want to talk about hiring, because that is what pays the bills here at the old Hire Learning Podcast. It's what keeps these neon lights still going. Reframe the questions a little bit. I want to get your thoughts on some of these. Okay.
Sure.
Let's start here. What's one hiring opinion you have that you think most leaders would disagree with? Do you have any contrarian points of view in this space?
I choose candidates with adversity over pedigree. And so what I mean by that is that I'm not wowed by candidates that have the sort of perfect sequencing of education and experience. And I go, oh, I'm looking for people from Harvard that then went to investment banks that then did consulting jobs and so on and so forth. What I'm looking for more over that is people who have a proven track record of overcoming adversity, because I think pedigree makes the assumption that business conditions will always be perfect. And so I need somebody who can drive me through this sort of perfectly sequenced, business situation. I think the reality of the business world is that it is very volatile, and very challenging at times. And so, having people that can handle that, having people that have a proven track record of being able to handle that is a much bigger competitive advantage than having people with the best pedigree.
I love the way you frame that. I say a lot of times that, we've talked a lot with customers. I mean, we've had some, especially it's gotten better over the last 5 to 10 years, but pedigree, university, those types of things were just seen as like, if they don't have it, we don't want to see them. And I know a lot of people that went to the Ivy League and great schools, and some of the least successful, dumbest people I know, just to be, just in terms of any large group. And then I know some people that like went down the road here to FAU and worked 2 jobs and busted their butts, and they're killing it. I mean, famously, some people are high school dropouts that will become world-class entrepreneurs. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And I love the way you said that business conditions are never kind of static or linear. There's always something you have to face. And so seeing somebody that's gone through that and been able to adapt and still have success, I think that's awesome. I love that. What's one interview question you use that everyone should steal?
Finding the right talent for your team doesn't have to be a struggle. Meet Aon Hire, the world's first hiring experience management platform designed to transform the way you hire. Powered by AI, Aon Hire takes the hassle out of every step in the process. From smart resume analysis to customized interview questions, it saves you time, money, and effort. Plus, with real-time insights from every interview, you can quickly identify top candidates, reduce turnover, and stay on budget. And forget about note-taking, Aon Hire takes care of that for you. Ready to revolutionize your hiring process? Visit aonhire.com and get started today.
So I asked for people to tell me about a time that they really, really wanted something and they couldn't get over that hump. They couldn't get past whatever it was that was holding them back. And I asked them to sort of tell me about it and tell me how they acted or reacted and what they sort of did. And what I'm looking for is people that have a tendency to blame external factors as opposed to people who sort of take every setback as a personal challenge, right? And so if it's I really wanted a promotion, but my boss didn't like me and we just didn't get along, or I was really excited about this opportunity, but the company didn't do well and the market went against us, or the CEO didn't do a great job, or something like that. That to me is a bit of a red flag, because what I want is people that take what's happening around them, look first internally and say, what is it that I can sort of be doing better? What is it that I can own? What is it that I can learn from this? Even if it doesn't make a difference in that moment, I want to hear that they use that as sort of a lever for growth. If people sort of look around and say, oh, the conditions aren't perfect, today's not going to be my day, that's sort of somebody that's not really going to persevere and drive through some of those challenges and obstacles that are bound to come up.
I love that. Adding that to my interview question Bible, which is now 3,000 pages long. So I appreciate that. You mentioned the red flag there. I'm just interested, as you look back on hires you made that didn't work out, is there any time you ignored a red flag, or maybe something you had to learn and kind of like realize, oh, this doesn't actually work as well as I thought it did in terms of a heuristic?
Yeah, I think I've probably been most guilty about ignoring red flags when a candidate came in with like a tremendous amount of charisma, that there was something sort of magnetic, or something that sort of almost put me in like a dreamlike state, I would say, right? Because people with charisma, they tend to come in and make you, without even proving it to you, they make you believe the best about everything about them, right? And so if I walk out of an interview now and I go, wow, that person was the like best candidate ever, I already know that I've like somehow messed up, right? And I need to sort of take a step back and start the internal dialogue with myself over again and be like, okay, what can I concretely point to, right? In evaluating people, you have a tendency to, I think we all have a tendency to be very narrative based. And so we start to build the narrative around this person. And so when they come in as all charismatic, you think they have sort of the keys to unlock every single door. It's important to sort of break that narrative type of thinking and try to be a little bit more concrete about what are their strengths, What are the things that you're still not sure of? What might be sort of their weaknesses? What do you want to push harder on?
Charisma is a linear skill because it is a skill, but it makes you feel like they have all these other skills that they may not have. And I apologize if you've been in a dreamlike state since we started the podcast. I will try to tone down the charisma. The only cure for that is insomnia, though. Oh, I got my cookie joke in. I feel good now. All right, you don't got to name names. Craziest interview you've ever been a part of, either side of the table. Just one that comes to mind, like, whoa, can't believe this is what it was.
I've been I once went to an interview this was back when I was in finance at a firm that believed in radical candor. And that was one of the most uncomfortable experiences I think that I've ever had. It was
Were they in the hedge fund space?
yes, they were in
I'm
the hedge
very
fund
familiar
space.
with them, I think. Go ahead. So tell me
And
about
so
it.
it was like a group interview. They were intentionally like belligerent and hostile. And I'm still very young in my career at that point. So while I had heard of scenarios like this where the idea this sort of see how you act under fire, this was sort of my first experience with it. And the mind shift that entire interview process had on me, right? Of like really understanding how there's this firm that operates culturally in a completely different way than every other firm from A to Z, right? And when I say a different way, I don't just mean different than other financial firms, like different than human beings, like different than American culture, like what I was grew up on and what I was primed for. Um, I think that was the first time I got a personality test, I think, as well. Like all of these things, I felt like I was poked and prodded, almost like I got beamed up onto sort of like an alien ship, and and I got pulled apart. That was definitely sort of the wildest, craziest, and probably most
I've heard similar
uncomfortable I've ever
things.
been.
I've heard of people who have worked there and gotten cried after reviews, and that's like a daily thing there. There's such a thing as taking a concept and an idea and then taking it to its big extreme and all of a sudden bastardizing that concept and your culture. If you would have gotten a job there, just know that you'd have been graded in real time based on everything you said and every conversation you had one-to-one, and that they'd have a baseball card of you on the door when you walk in.
Yep.
So listen, that works for some people, doesn't work for other people. You know what? Does not surprise me that's what first came to mind. That sounds like not a great candidate experience, but you know what? Some people have gone on to have a lot of success there, so maybe they know what they're doing. Last one, and I didn't prep you for this one, so you have to off the top of your head. What is the hardest role you've ever had to fill, and what made it so brutal?
I would say being the CEO at a startup was the hardest thing that I ever had to do. And I think it's because there was a couple of different things. Number one is every single thing you do, people are looking at you and watching you and reading your body language, reading where your eyes go when you're saying something. Subconsciously, they're evaluating every single thing you do. If you sit in your chair and you're slumped in your chair and they're nervous, did we have that investor meeting go, or how do we close out that period or something like that, and they see you slumped in your chair, you could be slumped in your chair because you didn't sleep last night, right? Or you could be slumped in your chair because you had a big lunch and now you're feeling a little sleepy, but they
Maybe
read
some
into
cookies
it.
at lunch. Who knows?
Right. They read into it their anxiety and their fears. And so I think that was number one. Number two, it was where do I draw the line between what I do and who I am? And so when you build a company and you start up a company and it is sort of the foremost product of who you are, the line between where you end and that endeavor begins starts to become sort of very blurred. And that means that you feel every success as if it was your own personal success, and every failure you feel as if it was your own personal failure. So that thing that I sort of spoke about before about, when somebody goes through something that they really want and then they don't get it, is do they internalize it or externalize it? When you're the CEO and the founder of a business, you have no option but to internalize it. You internalize every single thing, everything that, from employee number 1 to employee number 500 does, right? Everything that a customer says, you take that as a direct reflection of you and your efforts and your ideas and your energy and all of that. And so understanding sort of like how to put distance between those two things, and say, this is who I am, and this is who I know I am, and I'm very, very, content with who I am, and this is what I do, and there'll be ups and downs here, but that's not necessarily an up and down on me. That was a very tough role to step into.
The must listen for anybody, because especially right now, everybody's saying I could be an entrepreneur, I can do this. AI has democratized the ability to do it. And far be it for me to stop any from doing that. It's great if you can make that happen. But the other side of it is exactly what you talked about. I say all the time that, it's not really about the heart or the mind of an entrepreneur. It's about the stomach. It's your ability to, you have that megaphone at all times. People are looking at you at all times. The words you say carry big weight. You can't show everything. And that's why it can be one of the most lonely positions in any company, because who do you share with? You have to be, kind of that even keel. You got to be careful about, what you're afraid of, what you're excited about. Just your words carry so much power that you start to isolate. And then you go home and it's like, can you talk to your wife and kids? Right? Who knows? Can you talk to your friends? Are they doing the same thing you're doing? And it becomes this thing on isolation. I got a post coming about this later, but it was one of the things that, I started the company with two partners, and after they left, there's a lot of things that I was excited about. But one thing that I didn't realize is that they were doing a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of just having somebody to share with and like vent to and like be able to turn to and say, oh, I know exactly what we're doing. So yeah, I'm totally with you on that. It's not easy. That doesn't mean it's not for the right people. And it doesn't mean you can't have a lot of success, but don't read about Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and Mark Zuckerberg and think I could do that too. Because there's a lot more to it. I would say it's a lot more bad days than good. And then you got to go through a lot of the bad days.
And even if you do read about those guys, really read about them, because they went through that too, right? It
Go read Isaacson's book on Musk and all the times he almost lost the company and had to risk it all and all the, listen, I say this, one of my favorite like findings that I've kind of realized about life is that I don't think being wealthy, there's any correlation behind intelligence. I don't even know that there's a correlation on being charismatic or any of these things. To me, the highest correlation truly driving wealth is what are you willing to do? Because if you look at what an Elon Musk is willing to do, close off almost every other part of his life and focus like this and put all the chips on the table and sleep under his desk and do all these things. Well, then you kind of get an idea of like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's kind of why he's become the success. Yes. Some people are willing to do unethical things where others are not, right? And they become wealthy. Some people are willing to, forego any type of personal pleasure and whatever it is. Like, it's just a matter of like, listen, to get to a certain level of success and wealth, you're going to have to make some big time sacrifices. And it just depends on what sacrifice that is. And so, yeah, like if you want to be an entrepreneur, you know what? Walk into it with your eyes full, because you should know that this is a process and there's no such thing as an overnight success story. And a lot of times you're dealing with a lot of the things internally that you were talking about, and it's not easy. So I appreciate you saying that and sharing that. I'm interested about, we talked about AI a minute ago. Do you have a personal use case that you're using like in your day-to-day life that like, I don't know, maybe like a fitness app or like a cooking thing or anything that you're using?
So I love Claude design as a thinker, and as somebody who, for me, it was always the hardest part was communicating what it was that I was thinking. The idea to sort of like spin up an interface or spin up, an example of something and be able to walk into any room and be like, this is exactly how I imagined it. But having that within 5 minutes and not having to go through a mock-up or a designer or something like that, like from idea to communication, it's weird because like I know as a culture, we've gotten so used to presentations and PowerPoints and spreadsheets and things like that. I don't like communicating that way. Like I actually want to show you what it is that is in my head. So Claude Design has gotten the closest, I would say, of any tool that I've used of taking what's actually in my head and putting it onto a screen and doing that within 5 minutes. I would say, I'm planning a post about this. I used AI a lot to help build and plan out a vegetable garden that I'm working on this summer, and it's been a total failure. And it has me thinking a lot about like how AI sometimes doesn't increase your expertise on something; it just increases your perceived expertise on something.
Ooh.
So I now, the biggest mistake I made was that I allowed AI to convince me that I was an experienced and expert farmer when I was so far from that reality. And like, as I got further into it, the what I thought was the science of growing things is now actually really more like the science and art of growing things. And I was completely ignorant to that. And AI actually made that blind spot even bigger, I would say, than if I had just done it the old fashioned way and spoken to people and picked up books and things like that. I think I would have been a lot more aware of how much I needed to know and how much I needed to experience. AI sort of tricked me into thinking that I could be an expert overnight and that I would have this great and flourishing garden, but I have like 4 cherry tomatoes and like 2 little hot peppers, and that's all I have to show for
No salad bar at your house right now. By the way, with all the things going on in the news, we could use the vegetable garden.
I know.
Jeez. At least we know it's okay. All right, last one, and then we're going to go to our lightning round, which I'm pretty excited about. What's some advice that you'd give 20-year-old David that you didn't know then, but that you know now?
I would say that the most important thing for you to learn growing up is how to learn. I think we trick ourselves into this idea that we spend the beginning part of our lives learning, and then we take everything that we learn and we start to apply it later on, right? And so you go, oh, I want to learn something that I'm going to be doing, and so on and so forth, and I want to specialize in all those things. I should have spent all of my time just learning how to learn new things as quickly as possible. The world changes so much. The things that you conceive as being an important thing or a meaningful thing when you're 18 years old, by the time you're 28, are gone. Like, they just don't exist anymore, right? And so the only constant is the fact that everything will change. And so if you're able to learn and you're able to learn quickly and effectively, especially with the tools that we have now, the access to information and knowledge and data that we have now, if you're able to be an effective learner, that'll make all the difference to you for the rest of your life.
Super profound advice in a podcast full of profound advice. So I appreciate that. Very good stuff.
Thank you.
All right. Now, I saw you post about the Knicks recently. We just talked
Yes.
about the beginning. I have 2 months later. You're still very excited. I'm going to assume you're a pretty diehard fan.
I am a very diehard fan.
Here we go. Lightning round. All right. We're going to start here. Name me your favorite unheralded player in the last 20 years of Knicks.
In the last 20 years of Knicks, my favorite, I'm going to go back a little bit further.
That's fine. Go back 30
I'm going
years.
to go into the 90s. So my favorite unheralded Knick was Anthony Mason. So Anthony Mason was, Pat Riley was the coach back then. He had this knack for finding guys basically that were discarded by every other team just off the scrap heap. And then he would bring them in because they had that dog in them and that drive to just do whatever was necessary to succeed. And he would unleash them on the league. And Anthony Mason was like the perfect example of that. He had a tremendous amount of skill, but he also had this like toughness and this grit and this, you can see it in every game that he played, that he thought that he was going to go back to the doldrums. He was going to go back to the minor leagues, right? If I don't give everything that I have in this 1 second, then that's it. My career is going to be over before I know it. And he played with his hair on fire that way. He wore his personality on his sleeve. Growing up, he was my favorite Knick.
Hair on fire, also famously used to etch
Yes.
into the side of his head. I think for the kids who don't know about Anthony Mason, he's a combination of Draymond Green and Julius Randle. If you put those two guys into one player from like a skill perspective, but like just kind of a little bit out there and like you're not sure what he's going to do, he's on the edge. Him and Oakley, I remember those Knicks teams. They were amazing. I grew up watching kind of 90s basketball. To me is where the NBA really kind of became part of my life and part of my art. Loved seeing Pat on the sidelines with the great suits. Now we got him down here in South Florida. All right. What was your greatest Knicks moment prior to this championship run?
It was probably last year. So I was in the stadium when they beat the Celtics in Game 4. So that was the game that Tatum tore his Achilles tendon, which wasn't a
People
great
need to remember that would not have affected the end of the game. You guys were up by 10. There was like a minute left.
Yeah, and so it was in a lot of ways it was very, very similar to the Game 4 of the NBA Finals this year, right? Because the Knicks won the first 2 games on the road. They lost Game 3 at home. So now you're coming into Game 4 and you have this like anxiety that if we lose this game at home, then that's it. We're back to 2-2. The favorite has 2 of the next 3 at home. And we lost all momentum. Like we just dropped this like perfect opportunity. And so I was in the stadium for that. They came out and they fought through, and then the injury happened already when they were sort of up by double digits, I think, in the fourth quarter. But the euphoria that was bubbling in the arena that night of this is it, like we vanquished the Celtics and we're about to go into the conference finals. That was the most excited and the most success that I've ever been in the arena for.
Okay, I don't know if this follow-up question will be the follow-up series, but what was the lowest point as being a Knicks fan the last 30 years?
So many low points. I would say every trade of the Isaiah Thomas era where you were like, oh, there goes our roster for the next 4 years because the salary cap means like we'll never get a good player. The LeBron decision, like I really convinced myself that LeBron was going to come to.
What an amazing juxtaposition, though. Now he said that I wanted to go to the Knicks first, and you guys were like, no, we're good. That has to feel so great.
Yeah, but the worst one for sure was probably 94 game 6.
Charles Smith?
No, that was before. The Charles Smith was before that. I'll put that aside. But this was, they're in the NBA Finals. This was John Starks went like 1 of 15 or 17 or something like that. The Knicks were up 3-2 in the NBA Finals. It was the night of my sister's wedding. I spent the entire time watching the game in a little office that was at the catering hall. And they had the opportunity to win the NBA Finals and they lost. And I just remember that feeling.
He shot you out of the game. Starks was not like, he wasn't the guy that should be the starting 2 good on your team. He should have been a nice microwave player off the bench. I think he played too outsized the role on those teams. God love him. He had the dunk, had some big moments, but also let
another one of those scrappy players that
scrappy player, those junkyard dogs.
But he was the type, you're right, that if you didn't have it on a given night, you just wish you had somebody to go to behind that.
When this year, during the playoff run, did you feel like, because you got all this cynicism and skepticism built up over all this time, when did you feel like you had a shot? What point?
I would say it was probably game 1 of the Cavs series. And so they came back. That was the 22-point game that they sort of came back on. And, I think beating the Hawks by a lot in game 6. And then sort of the
Sixers without Embiid.
Right. Yeah. And you felt like, okay, but like pedal to the metal. Are we going to sort of get through this? And then that game, right, where they came back from sort of 22 after coming off like this very long layoff and they were really, really rusty. And you go, wow, like that was not our best night. We could have really, really packed it in, but this team has that fight that's necessary to sort of get through those tough moments that are still to come. That was the night that like I really started to sort of.
Brunson just walked him down like Jason, or Michael Myers, right? It was just like you just watched it start to happen, and like, oh man. All right, last one.
Yeah.
Game 5. Where were you? Where'd you watch it? Who were you with? And like, tell me the feeling.
So we were invited from months before to a party by one of our friends who lived in sort of the Union Square area in New York. And this wasn't going to be a sports party. This was supposed to be like a really nice, get dressed up type of thing. Because again, nobody thought that the Knicks would be in the finals. Nobody even cared about the NBA Finals as part of the schedule. And then as we got closer, they were like, oh, they sent out like a message. We'll have like a TV in the corner if the NBA Finals are on. And then like as it sort of crescendoed, they were like, okay, we're gonna have 2 humongous screens on at all time. So that everybody at this party can watch this game. And so, we went there. I got dressed up in like a fancy outfit, but it was all blue and orange because I had to represent the Knicks.
Tell me you wore the Dumb and Dumber tux, please.
No, it was. I had a Knicks shirt on, and then I think I had like a blue blazer, an orange Knicks shirt, and a blue blazer over it. So
there you go.
That was sort of what I went with. I had a bunch of my friends there. There was a lot of hugging and celebrating, and then I ran out to Union Square and just sort of joined the crowd there, and I was very calm and at peace. And my wife was asking, because I'm somewhat of a fanatic, and I'm known to jump up and down and curse at the TV and throw things and things like that. And she's like, "Why are you so calm? Why aren't you like jumping, running, climbing on things, everything like that?" And I was just like, I want to be in this moment. I want to take in all of this. I want to take in the joy of the city and the uniqueness of this moment right now. And there'll be a time for me to talk about it and go crazy about it and watch the highlights over and over and over again. But for like right now, I just want to observe and take in.
I love that. Congratulations, man. It's got to be a
Thank you.
great feeling. Sometimes it's like the dog chasing the car. What do you do when you actually catch the car, right? And it's just got to feel like now I can die in peace. I've seen it. This is such a long, I know for Knicks fans, I'm a fan of a couple different teams where it doesn't feel like we're ever going to get over the hump, but you can't really know the sweet without the sour. And Lord knows, Knicks fans, Cardinals fans, Suns fans, Vikings fans, Bills fans, we know the sour. So when you get to the top of that mountain, it's going to feel that much better. David, you are a role model for all of us. Hopefully all of our teams get rings soon. I really appreciate you coming on, man. I'll be up in New York soon. I can't wait to get together, maybe grab a drink, maybe get some cookies and milk.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, David, have a good one.
Have a good one, man.